All right, what is happening, class? Good to be with everybody for this discussion about our flight from Lynchburg to Greensboro and then Greensboro back to Lynchburg. So, considering the scenario, we're commercial pilots. We've obviously got at least 250 hours under our belt, so a fair amount of experience, especially for this flight. It's just an 80 nautical mile flight, less than an hour each way. Um, But regardless, there's some things we want to take in consideration. Uh, but strictly speaking of the paved checklist for the pilot, I think most likely all the experience is there that is needed that's going to get us through this scenario. So one, obviously, some pre-flight preparations that I would go through before even taking off with my buddy out of out of Lynchburg to get en route to go get the airplane. Some things I would take in consideration would be uh, obviously that which is needed for that particular leg of the flight just to get there. But then I would also take in consideration the things that are needed for that once I pick up the Cherokee and head back to Lynchburg. So my pre-flight and prep follows I actually have a scratch pad that I go off of. I kind of developed myself in ForeFlight, and it consists of NW craft, like we learned in our instrument days. Obviously, I'd be checking all our NOTAMs, weather, weight, and balance, any of those known delays. I'd be checking for runway links. That's the other thing about these two airports. Obviously, one is my home base and the other is just 80 nautical miles away. I've probably trained out of there quite a bit, so I'm probably pretty familiar with it. Next to that's Class Charlie, so I'm sure the runway links aren't messing with us too much. But uh, other than that, any alternates that are available, be in the proximity of these two airports. If I had to choose an alternate, it would most likely be just returning from whence I came. So that would probably be that. Fuel required for the trip. I'm going to be staying VFR, so my personal minimums for VFR fuel reserves are 1 hour. And takeoff and landing performance, which now we get into this new airplane. I would be doing some, hopefully this didn't get dropped on me last minute. If it did get dropped on me to last minute and I didn't feel like I could make those good preparations for it by checking out that new avionics suite, just exactly what kind of avionics are we talking about? Is it something I'm familiar with? Is it a new avionics suite pertaining to the aircraft? Is it a 430 that I'm familiar with, or is it a G1000 that I'm not super familiar with? So on and so forth. Or some of these other Garmin, or Dynon type avionics that I don't have a lot of familiarity with. I know what I have familiarity with. I know I've got the 430, I can do the 375, so on and so forth. I got kind of a handful that I'm familiar with. And maybe even though I'm not familiar with it, if I were to have plenty enough time to reach out, find the operator's manual on that piece of equipment or something like that, and I could get a good warm and fuzzy about it, hey, then that would be uh, making an informed decision, and I could see that being totally acceptable. So yeah, I would definitely query about those PA-20, that Cherokee avionics in that. Um, I would try to also speak with prior, as well as once I got there, linking up with the return to service agent, whoever that was, whether it was the mechanic who did the work or whatever it was. Try to link up with them, see if just ask them a few questions and get their general feel for the aircraft if they saw anything weird about it, or just have that conversation, just see where that conversation goes with the airplane. A conversation like that would probably only take about 10 minutes. So yeah. All right. Subsequent inspections, once we got there of the Cherokee, would obviously include um, the aero, uh, all the documents that pertain to aero registration, airworthiness, operating limitations displayed, the proper operating limitations displayed in the aircraft, and weight and balance on the aircraft, and I would try to make sure that those lined up, and the airworthiness directives and these type of things that need to be on it, the maintenance logs and that sort of thing, that make sure that that's all, if I'm bringing this aircraft back to my boss, my soon-to-be, hope-to-be boss, then I would hate to bring home an airplane that something wasn't comprehensive and complete, I would make sure that I'm bringing them back something that's completely looked over or completely fulfilled, and all was good there. So yeah, then I would obviously do a really good pre-flight of this airplane. I would, along with that, uh, try to get some history of where it came from, that sort of thing. But do a really good pre-flight of it. I would top it off with fuel, so I wouldn't be too worried about my, especially with that length. I don't have any problem with full fuel tanks, knowing that I've got my reserves. And next to that, I would do a really good run up, paying close attention to that, to those magnetos, paying close attention to that carb heat, seeing its effectiveness, paying close attention to that fuel pump, and that sort of thing. So yeah, so that's the aircraft. Moving on into the environment, based on the weather, as long as I stay clear of any visible moisture, any clouds or anything, as long as I stay clear of that, it sounds like we're going to be in good shape. The altitude that I'm picking for the way back would be 5,500. I feel like that's a reasonable altitude for the distance that it is. It's not too much time spent in the climb. You have to get there pretty quick. And at 55, much more than 5,500, let's just say, being that's VFR, on that particular magnetic heading, we're going to keep it to odds plus 500. So if I were to go up to 7,500, I just feel like for 80 something miles, it'd be a little bit more time spent in the climb than I think would be necessary. 5,500, that's cool. We'll not have to spend a whole lot of time in the climb, and that altitude gives us a little bit more time with this recent return to service aircraft in case something were to happen. It gives a little more time to make decisions. So that's good. Environment, being that the biggest environment pressure external pressure. The biggest external pressure that's pressing on us is the fact that this is for someone that we want to work for, but to me, this is fun. This is a funny scenario that got presented to us, and like others in the class, this is exactly where I find myself. I'm working on commercial now, and I really like the school I'm working at. I want to work with them someday as a CFI here pretty soon, as a matter of fact, like next summer, a little bit before next summer actually. And I know this owner, that what most impresses him, like in this situation, wouldn't necessarily be just strict accomplishment of the mission. It would be good decisions made along the way, and I respect the man for that, and that's why I do want to work for him. So that's my answer to this as well. The best impression that we could make, the best impression that there could be, would just be us making safe decisions and honoring our gut. I feel like a flight instructor or a chief pilot or something like that of a flight school would understand that best. So it's pretty simple. I'm a little bit too old to go trying to impress people anymore. I could care less, honestly. So that leads me into one of my references, at least for this assignment. One of my references being 1 Corinthians 10:13, and that is, do everything, or whatever you do, do it to the glory of God. And in saying so, it kind of implies don't do stuff to impress people. Do everything that you do for the glory of God. You'll be in good shape. So that's kind of a simple rule of thumb that I live by. And if people don't like it, well, then they might not supposed to be in my proximity anyway. So it's kind of rudimentary, but that's elementary, I should say. But that's what I go by. So easy as that. Other references I used for this was the airplane flying handbook, the instrument handbook. That's what we developed a lot of our checklists from, that sort of thing. The federal aviation regulations for the VFR fuel requirements and cruising altitudes, and yeah, I also include my Bible verse there, so that I kind of live by. So yeah, all in all, should be a simple flight, should be a fun flight, should be a rewarding flight in the sense that we're doing something. Obviously, this guy who we want to work for is entrusting us, and that is good news. So let's capitalize upon that and make good decisions. good pre-flights, just to recap here, good pre-flights, good pre-flights, like I like to call it, at least in this situation, where we're reaching out ahead of time and we're getting the information on that aircraft and then developing a pre-flight plan based off of that. I would say that would all spells success. So I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say about it as well. All right, take care.